Today I am reviewing Field Commander Napoleon, and if you just want to know what my general opinion about the game is, you probably don't need to watch this video. From the number of videos that I made already for the scenarios in this game, you probably have figured out that I wouldn't be making that many for a game that I don't like or just like so and so. Clearly to me, this is a fantastic game that deserves as much visibility and attention as it can get. To me, it is the best solitaire game of 2011, one of the best solitaire games that I've played in a long time. I'm just happy it did not come out the same year as Hornet Leader Carrier Air Operation, so that I can still say that that was the best one for 2011, for 2010, and this is the best solitaire for 2011, and one of the best games that I played this year, definitely. Field Commander Napoleon, third installment in the Field Commander series. After Roma and Alexander, now we have the opportunity of playing games about the different stages of the military career of a great commander, in this case Napoleon. This game borrows many concepts from the previous games in the series, but it adds a lot. More rules, more complexity, more nuances, more options, more scenarios, more game, more everything. This is the new generation. This is Field Commander 2.0, no doubt. Now I'll try to give you a sense of why this game is so great, and I will fail, because there's just no way that I can convey to you how good this game is. You will have to try it for yourself, but still, please bear with me and follow me in my generous attempt and definitely my romantic failure. To start the game, you choose a map and a scenario. Suppose we are setting up 1806, then you grab the combat units that apply to that scenario. You follow the setup instructions to place those units on the map and on the reinforcement track. You also add a French fortification, a French garrison to all cities that are controlled by the French player at the beginning of the game, and you add a fortification and a garrison belonging to the enemy to all cities that are controlled by the enemy or that are neutral at the beginning of the game. Because, let's face it, if they're not with you, they're against you. The scenario instructions will also tell you how many resupply points each side has at the beginning of the game, and you will also place objective markers on the map according to the objectives listed in the scenario instructions. In this scenario, for example, the objectives are all cities, so I wouldn't really need these markers here. Technically, I can just look at the city symbols, but these markers are cool, so I'm gonna use them just the same. Unless otherwise specified in the scenario instructions, in order to win the game, you need to have control of all objective areas by the end of the game. Some scenarios may also have a defeat condition. That means that if you meet the defeat condition during the game, you lose the game immediately. In this case, for example, you must hold Warsaw from the end of 1806 onward. That would be from the end of turn 4. Otherwise, you lose the game immediately. And Warsaw is here, is pretty far from where Nappy starts, so he has to run a little bit at the beginning to be able to get there before the defeat condition applies. At the beginning of a turn, you advance the turn counter, of course, and then you move any and all of your units. Your units move by one area, so they can move to an adjacent area. You can move them all together, send them to different areas. It is completely up to you. If at the end of movement there are areas that contain both your units and enemy units, like in these two cases, then you will have a battle in each of those areas. Once you resolve all battles, you have the option to force march your units that are not sharing an area with enemy units. However, in order to force march units, you need to spend a supply point for each unit that you force march, which can be a tough decision because there are also many other things that you want to do with your supply points, trust me. And if you force march a unit, you simply get to move that unit again to an adjacent area. In that case, I spent a supply point, another supply point, and this guy was here, and a supply point, and I pay the supply points for that. Once you're done with your force marches and possible with a second round of battles, then you have the French resupply phase, during which you gain supply points. The number of supply points that you gain depends on the scenario conditions. Some scenarios will give you points automatically, like this one, you just gain 7 supply points each turn. Other scenarios make you work for those supply points. For example, you need to take control of areas in order to gain supply points. And you can spend those supply points to purchase new units, to repurchase units that have been destroyed in battle, and to refit units that have been reduced during battle. Once the French resupply phase is over, it is time for the enemies to give you a hard time. The first phase during the enemy phase of a turn is the enemy orders phase, during which you will divide the enemy forces in groups, and the number of units in each group will be given to you by the scenario instructions. Different scenarios may have different groups, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller. For each such group, you will roll a die, and that die roll may be modified by the expenditure of supply points on the AI's part, and then the modified number will tell you what the enemies of that group will do. Suppose we're rolling for this group here. With a 2 or less, the group moves by 1 area towards an enemy held city. In this case, that group will go to Berlin. With a 3 would move randomly. 4 to 6 will move by 1 area toward a French held city. There is 1 here, so that's where the group will go, and then will attack that French city. 7 or 8, the group advances towards the closest group of French forces. In this case, for example, there are 2 groups that are equally close to that moving group. Then that group advances against the smaller French group, which is a little mean, isn't it? But I guess it makes sense, and also it makes things harder for you, so that's an interesting thing. Or the enemies may be instructed to advance towards a French-held city by 2 spaces, or to advance twice against the closest enemy forces. And then it's time to talk about battles. At the beginning of a battle, you will roll for fog of war. That is, you roll on this table. You may modify the result depending on the supply points spent by the AI, and the modified die roll will tell the number of battle turns that you will have to fight, and what are the special circumstances that will apply to that battle. Things on this side of the table are good for you, and these other things are good for the AI. Then you will take the envelopment check. That means that you will count the total number of combat points that each side has. If a side has 3 times or more combat points than the other side, then you don't fight the battle, and the side with the smaller number of combat points is simply eliminated. Determine battle plan quantities. The scenario instructions will tell you how many battle plans are available to the AI, and then depending whether Napoleon is present to the battle or not, you will have a different number of battle plans. You may buy additional ones. I'll explain what those battle plans are later. You may also buy inside counters if Napoleon is present to the battle. Insights are special advantages. For example, if you buy the morale, your forces have +3 on shock roll. Terrain will allow you to modify the initial deployment of the enemies, place up to 3 of your forces in French front, so closer to the enemy, things like this. Then what's next? Then you place the French forces, the enemy forces, and you're good to go. You start with turn 1. At the beginning of a battle turn, you will select and assign special battle orders, which are selected from this pool. The number of battle orders available to you will depend on several factors. You will choose these battle orders and you will assign them to the units that you want to perform them. Each special battle order will list a series of actions that will be performed by the unit that the order is given to, and or the battle order will have several bonuses and advantages that that unit will be able to benefit from. Units that do not receive one of these special battle orders can still activate, but they have to use a default battle order, and those are always less good than the special ones. Suppose, for example, I have 3 battle orders and I decide that one of my units is going to engage the enemy. I assign the engage order to that unit. I want this unit to flank the opponent, and this order can only be given to cavalry, and I'll assign it to this cavalry unit that will charge the opponents. As for the enemy's battle plans, you will draw the required number of special battle plans from a cup, from a mug. The enemies have their own pool of special orders, and you will assign those orders randomly to the enemy units, but starting from the units with the highest levels of skill. Once you have assigned all battle plans, you can start the battle turn. First, you resolve the battle plans of the enemies, starting from the enemies which are the closest to your own units. At the beginning of the game, those will be the enemies in the enemy approach area. And you resolve first the special orders, the counters that you gave them, and then you resolve the default orders. The units that did not receive a counter will perform, and those orders are based on the distance between the unit that is performing the order and your own unit. So you will have a different order if the unit is at range 0 or 1, 2 or more, or 0 plus in special circumstances. So you resolve first the units that are the closest to you, then the units that are far from you. After all enemy units acted, you activate your own units using the special battle plans or your own default battle plans. You can resolve your battle plans in any order you want. Once all units acted, the turn is over and you repeat the procedure next turn. Units in the battlefield may be in line or in column, and each formation has its own advantages and disadvantages. Units in line attack better, but they may not be able to move in certain cases. Units in column can move faster and more easily, but they don't attack as well, and they're more vulnerable to enemy shock attacks. Unless specified by the battle order, usually a unit must roll for activation in order to be able to perform a certain order. For example, in case this unit is trying to perform this order, if it is in column, doesn't need to roll, but it's not in column, so we'll have to roll for activation. This is the unit, if in column, no roll, so actually this unit can activate and execute that battle order automatically. When you have to roll for activation, you roll a die. If you roll the activation number, which is the number there, the black one, or less than the activation number of the unit activates, executes the order. Otherwise, the order is discarded and that unit does not do anything this turn. Whenever a unit enters a space containing units of the other side, one of those units will have to take a shock check. The unit that is taking the check will roll a die, and you compare the result to the combat factor of that unit, which is that white number there. If the unit rolled that number less, nothing happens. If the unit rolled more, then it fails the shock check, it loses a step, and must retreat one space. The other type of attack that units have is the fire attack. Units can fire at range 0 or at range 1, and they can fire either when they are instructed to do so by a default order or by a special order. A unit that is attacking rolls 1d10, and if it rolls equal to or less than its combat value, then it inflicts a hit on the opponent that it is firing at. In this case, for example, this cavalry unit only had one step. If the French unit hits it, that unit is eliminated. And this is how battles work. You assign and resolve orders, and you repeat the procedure until either one of the two sides has been completely eliminated. In that case, of course, the other side is the winner, or until one of the two sides has 3 times as many combat factors as the other side has. In that case, the side with the smaller force routs. But it may also be that neither of the previous applies by the time that you run out of battle turns. In that case, you will roll on this table to determine the outcome of the battle. It may be that the battle restarts immediately, that the enemies retreat, that the French forces retreat, or that both sides encamp, and in that case, the battle will be restarted another day.